She didn't even flinch when the hot coffee spilled over the stroller, scalding steam, rising like smoke from a battlefield. My wife screamed. Our infant daughter wailed. But Karen, Belinda Harper, the self-righteous president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA, just stood there, smugly sipping what was left in her designer mug, like she'd just swatted a fly. The coffee soaked through the baby blanket, and a reddish blotch began forming across the soft cotton. My wife rushed to lift our baby girl, panic in her voice, trembling hands checking for burns. That moment, that single moment, felt like a grenade going off inside me. And Karen? She said, maybe next time, keep your brat quiet during community hours. Some of us have standards. Then she turned. She turned and froze, because standing just a few feet behind her, silently watching the whole thing unfold, was someone she never expected. Me. Not the stay-at-home dad she thought I was. Not the guy who walked with a limp and waved politely at the mailbox. Not the man who planted daisies beside her hydrangeas last spring. No, she was looking into the eyes of the one man she never should have crossed. I wasn't wearing a uniform, but I didn't need one. The silence in that moment held decades of discipline. The kind you learn in Black Ops. In dark rooms with flickering monitors. In places the government doesn't acknowledge. And Karen, she saw it. Not just the rage. Not just the stillness. She saw something older than her rules. Older than her fake smile and her fragile authority. She saw war. My hand clenched, not because I wanted to hit her, but because it took every ounce of control not to. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, the kind of movement you make when every instinct in you is trained for precision. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I simply looked her in the eye and said one line, "You just made the worst mistake of your life." The color drained from her face. She looked down at the child she'd just assaulted, then back at me, and realized the truth. This wasn't just about coffee anymore. This was about justice. Mine. And it had already begun. Fade to black. Title appears. HOA Karen threw hot coffee on my infant, then froze when she saw who was watching. 3 months earlier, we thought we'd found paradise. After years of moving between cities from military bases to federal buildings, we finally decided to settle down. My wife, Sophia, had been begging for peace. Somewhere quiet, somewhere green, somewhere safe to raise our first child. Oak Ridge Estates seemed perfect. Manicured lawns, birdsong at sunrise, a tight-knit community with smiling neighbors and a homeowners association that promised standards for living. Sophia fell in love the moment she saw the tree-lined cul-de-sac. The moving truck hadn't even been unloaded, and she was already dreaming of backyard picnics and nursery paint colors. Our daughter, Ava, was just 3 months old when we moved in. Tiny fingers, big eyes. Her laugh could stop time. I was still adjusting to civilian life, still waking up at 5 a.m. from muscle memory, still scanning exits in grocery stores. But here in Oak Ridge, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could learn to relax. That illusion shattered the moment we met her. Belinda Harper, 62, silver bob haircut, pastel sweater vests, and clipboards. Lots of clipboards. She was HOA president for over a decade and ran Oak Ridge like a suburban kingdom. She greeted us with a thin smile and a stack of rules. No visible toys on porches. Strollers must be folded when not in use. Trash cans must be rolled in within 30 minutes of collection. It was less of a welcome, more of a warning. Sophia, ever the peacemaker, thanked her and tried to smile. I simply nodded. I'd seen people like Belinda in far more dangerous environments, the kind of people who hide behind power they never earned. The kind who mistake control for purpose. At first, we followed the rules. We kept quiet. We waved. We showed up to community events, even brought homemade cupcakes to the HOA potluck. But Karen, sorry, Belinda, always had something to say. The stroller was too close to the path. Ava's cries during nap hours were disturbing the elderly. Sophia's flower choice wasn't in harmony with the community aesthetic. We tried to laugh it off, until the notes started showing up, slipped into our mailbox, folded under our doormat, taped to our door. Your child's noise levels are becoming disruptive. Please consider soundproofing. Your wife's presence at the park alone with the child has raised concerns. We are watching. That last line, that one chilled me. I wasn't just a former federal agent. I'd spent years dismantling networks that operated in silence, cartels, trafficking rings, hostile foreign cells. I knew the language of control, and Belinda had weaponized it like a pro. But she didn't know me. Not yet. And not until the day she crossed a line so unforgivable, even the quiet man at the end of the cul-de-sac would be forced to act. It started with whispers, then glares, then a war waged in silence. A week after the last note, Sophia caught Belinda standing at the edge of our lawn, phone in hand, snapping pictures of our porch. No knock, no hello, just a quick click and the sound of retreating footsteps. She reported us to the HOA for leaving a baby blanket draped over the railing. Visual clutter, the complaint read, disruptive to neighborhood harmony. I could have ignored it, should have, maybe, but Sophia's hands were trembling when she handed me the letter. She laughed it off, but her eyes were red. That's when I knew. Belinda wasn't just playing by the book. She was writing her own. A few days later, we went to the community park, the one nestled inside Oak Ridge, framed with roses and swing sets, where mothers gathered like clockwork. It was Ava's first time in the sun without layers, her soft giggle wrapped around the wind like music. Sophia placed her on a blanket, and we sat down to enjoy a quiet morning. Then Belinda arrived, not with kids, not with a book, just a folding chair and that damned mug of coffee she always carried printed with the words, "There's no place like HOA." She unfolded the chair exactly 6 feet from us and sat, silent, staring. 10 minutes passed. Ava cooed. Sophia read aloud from a parenting book. And then, suddenly Belinda stood. She walked up, slow and deliberate, and said with the sweetness of poison, "Some of us are trying to enjoy a peaceful morning. That noise," she nodded toward Ava, "doesn't belong here." Sophia's face twisted with confusion. She's just a baby. She's not even crying. Belinda leaned in. Your baby doesn't get special privileges because her father used to be someone. That hit harder than expected. She'd done her research. I stood up, jaw tight, pulse steady. Is there a problem, Miss Harper? She took a sip from her cup and smiled like she'd won something. Not at all. But remember, this community has rules, and some of us actually enforce them. After she left, I checked the stroller. A tiny smear of something sticky was on the handlebar. Mustard, maybe. Sophia hadn't noticed. Ava hadn't touched it. But that was the moment I knew. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was psychological warfare. From there, things spiraled. We received a warning letter about unauthorized use of front yard space for letting Ava sit on a blanket in the grass. Then another, failure to meet visual standards due to plastic baby toys. Then, one that made my fists clench, repeated disruption from infant vocalizations. Final warning before fines are imposed. Sophia cried that night. I just wanted a home, she whispered. A normal neighborhood. Somewhere safe. I wrapped my arm around her and stared out the window, straight at the porch light across the street. Belinda's house. She wasn't trying to uphold order. She was trying to make us leave, and I was done playing nice. The final straw wasn't loud. It didn't involve a letter or a fine. It was a knock, soft, almost polite, just as the sun was setting on a Friday evening. Sophia opened the door, cradling Ava in one arm. On the other side stood a man we didn't recognize, mid-30s press polo shirt, clipboard in hand. Hi, I'm from the Oak Ridge HOA Compliance Division, he said, voice rehearsed. I'm here to do a visual inspection for potential violations. Sophia blinked. An inspection? At this hour? He didn't answer her question. Instead, he pointed toward the side gate. I'll be quick. Just need to verify yard conditions and safety compliance. Ma'am, I suggest you remain indoors for liability reasons. It was ridiculous. There were no rules that allowed surprise inspections, and certainly not after hours. But Sophia, still shaken from the week's events, didn't argue. She closed the door and called me immediately. I was home in under 5 minutes. The man was gone by then, but Sophia's face was pale. He didn't even look around much, she said. He just walked to the backyard, scribbled something, and left. We checked the cameras, and that's when the alarm bells started ringing. The footage showed the man entering through the gate, but pausing at the edge of the patio. He wasn't inspecting anything, he was taking photos, specifically of Ava's toys, our laundry line, and the back door lock. His focus wasn't on aesthetics, it was surveillance. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I filed a formal inquiry with the HOA. Their reply was chilling. There is no compliance officer employed by Oak Ridge HOA at this time. That was it. Belinda had sent someone unofficially to snoop on our home. Maybe someone from her family, or one of the loyal residents she'd trained like a private army. Whoever it was, they'd crossed into something far more dangerous than property disputes. The game had changed. Sophia begged me to stay calm, but I'd seen this kind of escalation before, not in suburbs but in foreign towns where manipulation turned to intimidation, and intimidation became something worse. I knew the pattern, and I knew the playbook. So I opened mine. I installed 3 new security cameras, added biometric locks, and created backups of all HOA letters, emails, and surveillance footage. I began logging every interaction with Belinda. I sent anonymous surveys to neighbors, and quietly I started building a file. Meanwhile, Belinda only grew bolder. She called the fire department on us for a burning smell. It was just dinner. She reported us for excessive water usage. We watered the lawn twice a week. Then, at the next community board meeting, she made a public statement. We must be vigilant. Not all new families are compatible with Oak Ridge values. People clapped. Not everyone, but enough to make Sophia feel the walls closing in. Enough to make her question if this place, this home we'd prayed for, was even worth it. Then came the coffee, and everything changed. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that almost makes you forget you're living under siege. Sophia had insisted we take Ava to the neighborhood park. She needs sunlight, she said, her voice still hopeful despite the exhaustion in her eyes. We can't let that woman keep us locked inside. I agreed, not because I believed the day would go smoothly. I didn't, but because I wanted to show Sophia that we weren't going to be bullied out of normalcy. I packed a blanket, a bottle, and Ava's favorite plush elephant. Sophia brought her smile, weary but brave, and the 3 of us walked out together. The park was nearly empty, just the distant whir of sprinklers and birdsong. We found a shady spot under the elm tree and laid Ava on the blanket. She giggled, arms flailing like she was trying to fly. Sophia knelt beside her, singing softly, her long, dark hair falling over one shoulder like a curtain of calm. I sat on the bench nearby, watching, scanning, always scanning. That's when I saw her. Belinda Harper. Same pastel cardigan. Same smug expression. Same steaming mug in hand. She walked toward us like a queen inspecting a garden, slow, deliberate, with her spine too straight to be casual. She didn't say hello, didn't acknowledge me. She walked directly toward the stroller, Ava's empty stroller, and stood over it like it was some kind of offense to her authority. Then she spoke, not to us, to Ava, screaming babies don't belong in peaceful neighborhoods. Sophia stood up, face flushed with shock. Excuse me? Belinda turned to her, eyes narrowed. You people think rules don't apply just because you flash a smile and bake cupcakes. But I see through you. Through him. She nodded toward me, then took a slow sip of her drink. I rose from the bench, already halfway there. Back away, Belinda. She did, but not the way I expected. She stepped back with a theatrical sigh, tipped her mug slightly over the stroller, and splash, the brown liquid poured out in one deliberate motion, steaming hot coffee cascading over the stroller seat, soaking into the fabric, and running down to the footrest where Ava's blanket had been moments before. Sophia screamed. I moved fast, instinctively, checking the blanket, the padding, my daughter's skin. She was untouched. By some miracle, Sophia had scooped her up seconds earlier. But that didn't matter. The smell of scorched fabric filled the air. Sophia's voice cracked. What the hell is wrong with you? Belinda's expression didn't change. Maybe now you'll learn. Then she turned to leave, and that's when she saw him. A man standing a few yards behind us. Sunglasses, gray beard, crisp suit, watching silently. She froze, because she knew that face. Everyone in Oak Ridge did. They'd seen it on a campaign poster last fall. Judge Marcus Hale, federal judge, our neighbor, and the one man Belinda had desperately tried to impress during HOA re-elections. He stepped forward, voice calm, deliberate. "Miss Harper, did I just witness you assaulting that family's property? Potentially endangering a child?" Belinda's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He turned toward me, his voice unwavering. "Would you like me to file the police report myself?" That's when the color drained from her face. Her hand trembled. The mug slipped from her grip and shattered on the path. I picked up Ava in one arm, placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder, and turned toward Belinda. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." She didn't run. She couldn't. For the first time since we'd moved into Oak Ridge, Belinda Harper, queen of the cul-de-sac, ruler of the rulebook, stood absolutely still, frozen, powerless. Judge Marcus Hale's presence had peeled away the smugness like acid. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what had just happened. Not just the coffee, not just the stroller, but the look in his eyes. Disappointment mixed with something deeper. Judicial. Final. "Ms. Harper," he said, stepping closer, "I suggest you leave the park immediately before I escalate this matter to local law enforcement." Her lips trembled. It was just a misunderstanding. Sophia, holding Ava tight against her chest, finally exploded. "You threw hot coffee at a stroller. Are you insane?" Karen's eyes darted between us, then to the broken mug at her feet. She knelt down like she was going to clean it, as if repairing the mess would erase the crime. But the damage was done, and I saw it in her posture, the shift, the realization. She had messed with the wrong family. In her mind, we were easy targets, just another young couple, just another crying baby. She thought we'd fold under pressure like so many others who moved out quietly and willingly after months of HOA harassment. But now, the illusion shattered. Judge Hale knew who I was, not just by name. He and I had met once at a local benefit dinner where he learned about my past, about my federal service, about the investigations, the cases, the sealed files. He didn't just see me as a neighbor. He saw me as someone who had taken down bigger monsters than Belinda Harper. As she stumbled away from the park, clutching the broken handle of her mug, like it was a leash dragging her shame, I looked around. A few other neighbors were watching from a distance, silent. Some held their kids close. One woman shook her head in disgust. The whispers would spread, and I knew Belinda would feel it, because her empire, the quiet control she exercised over everyone through letters and bylaws and fear, had taken its first public hit. And worse, there were witnesses. Later that night, she tried damage control, a forced note taped to our door. To the Daltons, "I regret the misunderstanding earlier today. It was never my intention to cause harm. Please consider this an unfortunate accident." No signature, no apology, just fear wrapped in a desperate attempt at formality. Sophia didn't even read the whole thing before crumpling it. "She's scared," she whispered. "She knows she messed up. She has no idea," I replied, because this wasn't just about coffee anymore. It was about justice. And for the first time since entering Oak Ridge, the odds had finally shifted in our favor. There's a misconception about justice. People think it's loud, that it bangs on doors, throws fists, shouts in courtrooms. But real justice, the kind that lasts, moves in silence. Quiet, careful, methodical. Like smoke under a door. Like frost creeping across a window before the sun ever rises. And that's exactly how I began. Karen's coffee assault was the final push I needed. I wasn't going to threaten her, argue with her, or match her pettiness. I was going to dismantle her legally, procedurally, and with the precision I once used to take down criminal syndicates. Step 1, documentation. I began compiling everything. The letters she sent, the timestamps on our security footage, photos of the damaged stroller, a scan of the doctor's report from the pediatrician, minor skin redness on Ava's foot from steam exposure, just enough to document potential harm. I recorded every encounter since we moved in. Step 2, neighbors. I began talking to them, carefully, not gossip, not revenge talk, just simple questions. Hey, did Belinda ever ask to inspect your property without notice? Has she ever fined you without a warning? Do you know if HOA protocol allows individual board members to enter private yards? The responses flowed. People had stories, stories worse than ours. A single mother whose driveway chalk drawings were reported as vandalism. An elderly couple fined for having wind chimes that made unauthorized noise. A man who was banned from hosting his nephew's birthday party due to unregistered guests. None of them ever filed complaints. They were scared. But now that they saw her mask slip, now that they heard what she did to Ava, they began to talk. Step 3, the board. Oak Ridge's HOA wasn't a dictatorship, although Karen treated it like one. It had 4 other board members. Most of them were quiet, passive, caught in her orbit. But I learned one of them, Rick, a retired school principal, had tried to run against her 2 years ago. He lost by 4 votes. I scheduled a private coffee meeting with him at the local cafe. I showed him the footage, the letter, the doctor's note. I told him about the fake compliance officer who came to our house. And I told him what I planned to do next. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he looked up and said, I always thought she'd cross a line someday, but I didn't think it would be like this. Step 4, the law. I filed a formal HOA complaint through official channels, backed with documentation, witness statements, and the judge's written statement. But I didn't stop there. Using contacts from my past life, I pushed a civil harassment report through the local precinct. I spoke with a family attorney about potential restraining orders. I contacted the city council to report HOA overreach and misuse of authority. The storm was building, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, because Belinda had built her power on silence, the silence of those too tired or intimidated to push back. But now her silence would become evidence. Her paper trail would become a noose. Sophia watched all of this unfold quietly, cautiously. She was still shaken, still healing from the emotional weight of the past months. "You're really going through with this?" she asked one night, holding Ava close. I nodded. We didn't come here to run. We came here to raise our daughter in peace. And no one threatens that. Outside, porch lights flickered on across the street. Belinda's house glowed like a fake sanctuary, trimmed hedges, decorative wreath, and a dark shadow pacing behind the curtains. She didn't know it yet, but the empire she'd built on HOA bylaws and intimidation, it was about to fall, one complaint at a time. Some people collapse with a bang. Others unravel quietly thread by thread. Belinda Harper was the latter. At first, she tried to pretend nothing had changed. The same crisp pastel cardigans. The same click-clack of her polished heels as she walked down Oak Ridge Lane. She still waved at cars that didn't slow down and left passive-aggressive comments on the community bulletin board. But something was different now. The smiles she received were tighter, the responses more rehearsed. The whispers began following her like shadows on driveways and grocery aisles during morning jogs. Because the truth had started to spread. It began with Rick, at the next HOA board meeting, a full week after the coffee incident. Rick stood up and presented a motion to temporarily suspend Belinda from her role, pending a formal inquiry. He cited my complaint, Judge Hale's statement, and growing concerns from other residents. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make it personal. But Belinda panicked. "This is character assassination," she snapped, visibly shaking. "I have served this community for 13 years without flaw." Rick calmly replied, "That might be true, but one moment of unchecked power can undo a legacy." A hush fell over the room. Then Marla, a board member who'd never said more than a few words in any meeting, raised her hand. "I vote to suspend pending review." One by one, hands went up. Silent, reluctant, but decisive. The motion passed 4-1. Belinda stormed out, knocking over a pitcher of water as she left. That was the beginning of the unraveling. The next day, she tried to organize an emergency HOA meeting at her home. Only 2 people showed up. One was her cousin. The other left after 15 minutes, citing an unexpected call. She stopped showing up at the park, stopped tending to her flowers. The once immaculate yard began to wilt. The roses browned at the edges. Her signature lawn gnomes disappeared one by one. But it wasn't over yet, because fear turns desperate people dangerous. One evening, just after sunset, our Ring doorbell chimed. I checked my phone and froze. It was Belinda, standing at our doorstep, alone. Her hair was disheveled, her hands trembling. She wasn't wearing her usual pastels, just a gray hoodie and jeans. She looked small. I opened the door just a crack. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "You win?" I didn't reply. She looked up, eyes glassy. "You took everything. My board, my credibility, my community. You didn't just fight back, you destroyed me." Sophia appeared behind me holding Ava. Belinda's gaze dropped to the child. "She didn't deserve that," she muttered. "I don't know why I did it. I lost control." It would have been so easy to yell, to spit every ounce of venom back at her, but I didn't. Instead, I looked her in the eye and said, "You broke something that can't be fixed with an apology. You endangered a child." She nodded. Tears slid down her cheeks, surprising even her, and she turned to leave. That was the last time I ever saw her on my property. Within a week, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. 3 weeks later, her house was empty. Her name was scrubbed from the HOA documents. Her influence erased. But I didn't feel victory. What I felt was relief. Because peace, real peace, doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing your family is safe. That your daughter can grow up without fear disguised as authority. That justice, even in the quiet streets of suburbia, still has a pulse. And now it was finally beating in our favor. Spring arrived in Oak Ridge with a softness we hadn't felt since the day we moved in. For the first time in months, Sophia smiled without having to force it. The bags under her eyes slowly faded. Ava, now babbling and crawling, filled the house with the kind of joyful noise that once got us reported. Only now, no one complained. No more anonymous notes. No passive-aggressive stares. Just life. Unfiltered, unbothered, and finally, ours. Belinda Harper's house sold in 17 days. The new owners were a young couple with twins and a golden retriever. On their first day, they invited the neighborhood for lemonade and cupcakes. Sophia cried that night, not because of the past, but because she finally saw what this neighborhood could be. Rick, now acting HOA president, made good on his word. He revised several outdated bylaws and introduced a transparency policy. No more fines without written warnings. No more inspections without notice. He even created a committee to review board member conduct, ensuring no one would ever again hold unchecked power over others. One afternoon, he walked over with a smile and handed me a simple envelope. Inside was a letter signed by all 4 HOA board members. "We thank you, Eric and Sophia Dalton, for your resilience, your dignity under fire, and your commitment to making Oak Ridge a better place. You didn't just protect your daughter, you protected us all." It was the closest thing to justice I'd ever received in civilian life. And it meant more than I expected. But the real healing wasn't on paper. It was in the little things. It was Sophia letting Ava scream with laughter at the park without glancing over her shoulder. It was the couple across the street waving with both hands, not just nods. It was me, sitting on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun dip behind the trees and not scanning for threats. One evening, as I rocked Ava to sleep, Sophia asked me quietly, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" I thought for a moment. People like her don't come back. They just find new places to control. But not here. Not anymore. Because Oak Ridge had changed. It wasn't perfect, but it had learned something, the way a scar reminds skin of what it survived. The neighborhood had been held hostage by fear disguised as order. Now it was alive again. Messy, noisy, free. And as for me, I had changed too. I had spent a lifetime solving other people's wars, fighting battles in shadows. And yet it was here, in a place with white fences and pastel sidewalks, that I fought the one that mattered most, the battle for my family. And I won. Not through rage, not through violence, but with truth, patience, and a kind of strength I never learned in combat. A father's strength. If this story struck a nerve, if it reminded you that justice doesn't always wear a badge, and sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones rocking their babies to sleep, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to the HOA stories, where real people, real families, and real confrontations with power get the endings they deserve. Speech Balloon, drop a comment below. Have you ever dealt with an abusive HOA? Or maybe a neighbor who crossed the line? And remember, sometimes the scariest thing you can be in a quiet neighborhood is a calm man who knows exactly what he's doing. We post new stories every week. Raw, real, and always served with justice. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strong, and stay free.